Yo, 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 yo. What's up, all you burners, stoners, and potheads? This is Weedman 420 with the Weedman 420 Chronicles. How are all you vipers doing out there? Mrs. Weedman.
Mr. Weedman.
We're live. How the hell are you?
I'm well, obviously.
You're well?
You see me.
I do see. Hey, everybody out there in the world. Hopefully you're doing great. Hopefully you're smoking some big fat doinks while you're listening to the show. And we have a special guest on tonight, the author of Butter and Flour, Allchin. Ann, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good, Mr. and Mrs. Weedman.
Great.
And all you wipers.
Great to have you on. So excited to have you on the show. And, I'm going to let you say hello. So tell everybody just a quick little blip who you are just for a minute and say hello to everybody.
Sure. Well, nice to meet everybody. I live in Toronto. I'm here with my family. I have 2 kids, 15, 13. I don't know. I've been baking. I got into it medicinally, baking for a relative. And then things I've always loved to do is just to write. So baking and writing kind of go together.
Sweet.
And then, and I have a science background too. So
Nice.
A bit of a nerd, which always goes well with.
I'm a nerd. I'm a total nerd. So I'm going to ask you this question.
Okay.
And then I smoke, and then you, Miss Weedman, can talk for a minute because I got to smoke. So you smoke weed because we ask everybody this question.
All right. I smoke weed to get out of my head. That's really, I would say that that's the main reason that I smoke weed. So, when I was in university and then in my first job, I was a big Sunday night blues smoker. So, couldn't sleep, stressed about the next day, would stay up late, and we'd kind of solve that problem for me. So it's still kind of true. Yeah, it's still kind of true.
Nice. I love it. I mean, I love Sunday smoke sessions. Sunday night smoke sessions with Mrs. Weedman is my fave. So, Mrs. Weedman, you had something to ask Ann because we've been to Toronto. So talk a minute, say hello to everybody. Talk to Ann for a second while I take another hit of this delicious Ursula berry I'm smoking right now, grown by our friend Big Earl.
Yeah. Actually, we took a very spontaneous road trip to Toronto. We were sitting at Easter brunch with family and realized that between the kids having a break and Mr. Weedman's break from work, that we had like 6 days. And we're like, where could we go? That's close. Boom. 3 hours later, we're in the car. It was needing a passport to get in Toronto. So we headed up there and we had a blast. And our standout areas were the market, St. James Market. Yep. Super
Lawrence?
cool.
Yeah.
St. Lawrence Market. Sorry. Yeah. Super cool.
Yeah, they just rebuilt it actually. So they're renovating the whole thing, but it's the biggest, I think it's the biggest farmers market in North America. So it has crazy sandwiches and
the best blue fish sandwich I've ever had was from there. And so the greatest, I was in heaven. And hold on, I'll let Mrs. Weedman finish because I'm still disappointed about something about that trip, and I'll tell you in a second. Go ahead, Mrs. Weedman.
I know why, because we found the honey man downstairs. There's this little vendor, right? And he's in maybe like a 3x8 space, just surrounded by honey from around the world. And he dabs these little sticks in there and has you taste all of these honeys. Super great. And we're making our way back to the escalator, and over our shoulder, we see this Italian sandwich shop. And they're making these like insanely huge hoagies that were gooey. Oh my gosh. And we didn't get one. We were so full at that point that we didn't get one. We have to go back.
I'm gonna go tomorrow. I'm gonna go out of my way and I'm gonna send you guys a picture of me with a giant hoagie from Luigi.
I want to see it.
They had breaded veal cutlet sandwiches that were thin to the crisp. And I was so honeyed out and so sugared out. I'm like, we'll come back. And we're leaving Toronto to drive home. And Mrs. Weedman goes, you never got that sandwich. I'm like, why'd you remind me? She goes, I'll go back. I'm like, no, we're on the road. We're already on the highway. Let's head home. But this is the trip. Like, this was the memory of me not getting that Luigi sandwich in the bottom part of the right next to the honey guy. So mad to this day. So mad that I didn't get that Luigi sandwich. But I did have a great bluefish sandwich there, and you cannot beat that market. So there was another spot you like too, Mrs. Weedman.
Yes, Kensington Market or Kensington neighborhood.
Yeah.
Is it just
Yeah,
Kensington?
yeah, Kensington. Yep,
Yeah.
Kensington Market. So they call it Kensington Market, and it's a bunch of little food shops, but then it has a whole lot of vintage stores as well. It's definitely a stoner's paradise. Like
A
that's
little
everybody's
grungy.
like back. It's kind of, yeah, it's got a sort of a grungy feel to it. I don't know. Everybody's really welcoming there. There used to be a cafe there, and my friend saw Woody Harrelson smoking in there. So I don't
Ah,
think it's
cool.
there anymore after legalization, but it's always been super weed friendly for sure.
That's cool.
We stopped at a cheese shop. We shopped at a
Yeah.
cheese shop. We shopped at a fruit shop.
cheesemonger.
We saw,
For
if I
sure.
had a grill, I would have went to the butcher shop and got some meat too, because they were cleaving
Yeah.
meat right in the window. But the cheese
Yeah.
we had there was
And that super
Amazing.
cute
Sounds
little
like you
coffee
guys
shop
are,
on the corner. Yeah, we
yeah,
did. We
right,
did.
for sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was cool.
it
Now
was
we
good
need to go
times.
back. Now that weed is legal there, we need to come back and experience it at a different level.
Yeah,
Right?
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's changed a lot, for sure.
Yeah.
How is the weed market in Toronto?
So I'd say it's busy. There are a lot of dispensaries. I think things are going to shake out over the next little while. Like it was crazy when legalization happened because our the provincial governments are in charge of it, so it's almost like the state government. And they opened it to a lottery, so it wasn't really the most deserving dispensaries that got a license. It was whoever won the lottery, and there were just a handful of them. So some people held the lottery or the licenses, and they weren't really great service people. They didn't have the financing to get into it. But then after that, they opened it up when everything calmed down, and now it's pretty busy. So yeah, I think things are changing all the time, and we'll sort of find a new normal after a bit.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to making our way back up to Canada, and having smoking some weed up there with some peeps and going back to Toronto for sure. We got, it was a short amount of time because we went to Niagara Falls first, but we need to spend like a week there. And
Sure.
we ate some of the best Ethiopian food I've ever had. We had roasted goat and mango juice.
Mango juice.
Phenomenal.
Yeah,
Picture after picture of
like the lemon pancakes. I'm definitely total foodie, obviously. So
so are we. So
yeah.
are we.
Yeah.
Oh man. So we're super excited to have you on. I have your book. It's been behind me now for about 2 weeks on a couple of episodes we've done. So I got to read most of it. I didn't read every recipe because I was getting hungry, and Mrs. Weeman's a great baker herself, and that I believe in. She'll say different, but I believe she is. And so every time I look at your book, I'm like, you gotta make this one. You gotta make this one. You gotta make this one. But really well done. I love how you put recipes and stories and how you try to bridge the stigma gap and how you try to teach and educate in that. Not just the recipes, it's more than that. So tell me about yourself though. I don't want to steal your thunder on how this book is, but tell us about yourself. Give us your bio, a little bit of your history. I want to know who the fuck is Ann. That's what I want to know. So tell me who you are.
Well, look out, look out. So I guess weed kind of brought together a lot of parts of my personality. I'd say I'm pretty political, and I'm so glad that you like the stories and the destigmatization, because I really had to kind of fight for that. I met with a publisher. I wanted to talk about the history of weed and legalization and some of the players who have been involved in the fight over time, over the last 100 years, and some of the villains. And I've done that in other writing as well. But the first publisher that I went to, she said, "You realize we're a cookbook company." And so we were about to reach a deal. And then I said, "Oh, I'm pretty passionate about the stories. Like, it's really, I think being a weed advocate, you're not really doing justice to the plant unless you're standing up for a lot of the people who have been involved in the fight over time, who have been true believers in the health benefits." So I really wanted to tell that story, as well as helping people with treats. So that's kind of the other side of it. I got into baking because my father-in-law's partner, so she has terrible migraines. She grew up in a manse, like like the church apartment beside a church. Her dad was a minister. She was a grade 1 teacher. She's like the sweetest little old lady you'd kind of imagine. I hope she doesn't hear this, calling her old, because she wouldn't be happy. But she's like in her 70s.
We like to call it seasoned. We're well seasoned now in our age.
Yeah, she's well seasoned. But she misses time all the time for terrible migraines. So we were at the cottage with my father-in-law, who probably at that point was approaching 80. Now he just turned 90. And we said, would Kathy ever try cannabis for the headaches? And he said, I think she'd try just about anything. And so I'm definitely the cook of the family. I'm the one who does all the family weekends. I'm the one who bakes. So I took it away, Googled the shit out of it, basically, figured out decarbing, figured out dosing. And the first time I ever baked something, I made just plain chocolate chip cookies, fed one to my husband, and he ate 2. And I said, well, I don't know if you should do that yet. Like, I don't really know what I'm doing. And he went for a run, and he came back, and he could not talk. And the kids were little; they were still awake. I was like, okay, Dad's just
sounds like a Mrs. Weedman. It sounds like a Mrs. Weedman giving an edible to try to Mr. Weedman. The same thing. Try this. You're the taste tester. You got to tell me how strong this is.
Yeah,
can't move.
You're like the human tester.
I like your husband already.
For sure. But I played with the dosing after that. I mean, I'm cheap, I'm frugal, so I wanted to get away with the lowest dosing I could to get good bang for your buck. And then after that, I've had them lab tested. I try to keep things around 5 milligrams for novice users. Like, I find a lot of the people that I'm sharing treats with have never tried weed, and that's kind of what I love about it, because they've got some kind of health problem. Maybe they've never been a smoker in their life, but it helps them sleep. It helps them with nausea. It's, all the things that you guys know all too well. So that's my favorite part of writing the book, really, is the gifting, because I can go to a party. People are always, I'm pretty introverted, but now at parties, people are always walking up to me and saying, I heard you made some treat. How many should I have? What's the strength? Am I going to have to go home after this? And so I try to keep it pretty approachable. But I think the book isn't just for those people. Like, you guys, your audience, you're all into weed. You're well informed in cannabis. So my dream come true is to make a lot of weed ambassadors, where you go to a party or you go to a sick person and you kind of start to break down the stigma that way, when people, they're not ready to vape or try a bong or, whatever other kind of method. So
we've probably given out since 2013. Would you say about 5,000 edibles given out since 2013? Maybe more.
Yeah.
Maybe more.
I have not perfected any recipe at all whatsoever. So sometimes they're not pretty. They're not pretty treats. Yeah. I remember one particular Christmas party. Totally. Yeah, one particular. This is
when
Christmas
you first
party.
Started, though. This is when you first started.
Yeah,
early on.
I made a batch. I make a candy that's kind of like a Tootsie Roll, right? Well, this batch just didn't come together. It just didn't come together, and so it was more like not quite a hot fudge consistency. Yeah, like a jarred hot fudge, like a cold hot fudge, and so it was all stuck to the parchment paper. So we literally just threw this whole like sheet pan, bar pan of parchment paper covered with edible on it on the table with like a jar of spoons at either end, and all night long people were just taking a spoonful. Oh my gosh, everybody was wrecked. It was so good. It was so good though.
Yeah.
All you need was a little ice cream.
There were people, at one point there were people sitting at the table like tearing pieces of the parchment off and just licking it. We're like, oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, that's the amazing thing about baking with weed, is that no one complains.
No, they don't.
It can come out upside down. It can come out, gooey goopy, whatever it is. It can come out like the ugliest. What's that show? Where they decorate the cakes and they try to.
Oh yeah.
Whatever. It can come out completely ugly. People will be happy. Doesn't matter.
Yes, they will.
Even if it comes out stodgy, people will still eat it. If it comes out stodgy.
For sure,
for all of you great British baking show people.
So tell us a little bit about the book. You told us a little bit, but tell us a little bit more. And like, my thing is, I love the stories, because one of my taglines in one of my emails, it says it's all about the stories. Yeah. It is. So, but so what's the overall vision behind the book too?
So, when I talked about it with the publisher, we talked about telling stories of regular people, regular users, who have found out the truth about the plant over time. And it's kind of a celebration of how far we've come. These are kind of people who embraced it a long time before everyone kind of came to the table. So Jim Cooperman, he's actually in town. He lives in the interior of BC, and he was a draft dodger. He hid a pencil in his underwear, got drafted to Vietnam in California. He was at UCLA, I think. Took the pencil out, wrote on his draft card, "Get out of Vietnam," during his physical. And then he got in his truck and he drove north. And those people brought weed with them. So even when I interviewed him, so now he just turned 80. And when I interviewed him, he was still a little apologetic about it. He said, "Well, I haven't really come out about my use, but I'm a huge environmentalist. I'm really passionate about protecting big trees. And it makes the work a lot easier in the afternoon."
Very true. Very true.
So just those kinds of stories, people who've used it medicinally, like Scott Milton. So he, severe epileptic, he lost 2 people in his family. He lives in small town Alberta. Lost 2 people in his family to epilepsy, like drowned in a hot tub. He was having I think 100 seizures a week. And then he started making himself smoothies, so he doesn't even get high from it. He makes shakes out of it. Completely weaned himself off of all prescription meds. That's awesome. And gained weight, like gained muscle mass from the plant protein. So, I think, and it's incredible just when you start talking to people and the benefits that they've had, and the struggles it's helped them overcome, like, especially like people of color who have paid a high price in their families. So Rena Rampersad, she is an edible chef. I'm going to her. She's having an infused dinner in 2 weeks. I'm really pumped, like a high-end infused dinner. I told her not to wreck me, so I trust her. But her family's originally from Trinidad. Her dad had trouble with police because of it, so he always had to hide the fact that he used it medicinally. But her grandmother would make topicals for, if they had a sprained ankle or whatever, and she never knew what it was really. But then her brother ran into problems with the police as well. Ended up running because he was afraid of another police interaction, and passed away due to exposure. And so it's just, what you say, Mr. Weedman, about the stories is just so true. And these are just mostly people I've run into in my own circles, or people I've connected with online, but the stories just don't ever stop. So really, in the beginning, figuring out who to interview, I connected with people who had certain issues or medicinally. But then sort of as I went further in the book, I wanted to make sure that I was really representing diverse perspectives. I interviewed a veteran who went to Iraq, an American veteran. So he talks about it. I interviewed an athlete who played for the Flyers, I think. I don't know.
Yep.
You guys
I read that
feel
one
about the Flyers, but the Leafs over here were not overly happy with them. But so just trying to get the perspectives of people from all walks of life, telling their stories. And so that was really my overall goal.
I loved it. I love it. There's one special one we'll talk about it a little bit later. That it's the only bookmark fold piece in the book I did, because I didn't really want to do it, but I did it because this story I loved. So I can't wait to talk about it a little bit later. But now we're going to get into the nitty gritty, the dirtiness. I love it because Mrs. Weedman and you, Ann, are going to talk edibles. You're going to talk, like, discuss making them. And this is dope because I know my wife has badass experience since 2013. She was making them. Hit, miss, more hits than misses, but we've made a lot of different stuff. And we've have a lot of favorite people now when we go to parties, or I used to throw a big party every year on 420 called the Skunk Bus, and Mrs. Weedman would make the edibles for it, and I'd probably have 500 edibles on the bus. And if the rule was, if you came on the bus, you had to smoke or you had to eat an edible. You couldn't come on the bus. That's just the rule.
Consumers only.
So yeah, Skunk Bus only. It was great. So she got a lot of experience, but the misses weren't bad because I still enjoyed them, but this can probably help her maybe kind of close the gap on some misses where she can solid just crush it, just like I want to. And some of those recipes I cannot wait for her to make, so I'm super stoked. So Mrs. Weedman's going to take over. I'm going to let Ann. I'm going to get baked even more because that Ursula berry's got me cooking. So go ahead.
All right. So we're just going to talk a little bit about the basics of baking and the troubleshooting and the things that you've learned. You have a science background. I don't. I'm just a home baker. I enjoy baking. And
I'm also a baker, yeah. So I'm not like I have kind of phone a friend people. So when I run into trouble, I phone my friend home. I go, Hom, my snickerdoodles are flat. You know, how do we get out of this situation?
Damn, Mrs. Weedman, that's been your whole ruination. You don't have a Han.
I know. I don't have. I need that guy.
Well, now we can message online. So I'll send you pictures of my flops, and you can send me pictures of your flops. We'll trade.
Love it.
Fair enough. Yeah. So a big thing that many people who are just getting started with baking that they just don't know is that THC is not active in the plant until you heat the plant. And so we call that decarbing, right?
Yep.
And so what is your favorite method of decarbing? So for those that are getting new to bake or are new to baking, you have to decarb your plant. You have to warm or heat the flour before you make your compound to bake with. So your butter, oil, whatever your fat is that you're putting into your baking. So there's a lot of different methods. So Ann, what's your favorite method?
For sure. So my method is a method that my kids complain about a lot because they come home from school and it stinks. I actually like the smell. Now I like the smell mixed with butter. So my favorite method, I use it in the book because it's the most approachable. Everyone has an oven. It's easy. You set your oven timer. I set it at 240 and I go for an hour. And the reason that I do that.
You heard our episode on that, didn't you? I did what you did and how strong that came out. So go ahead. But when I read your book too, I'm like, ooh, she makes them strong.
For sure. Remember, I'm cheap. I'm frugal. So I want to get the biggest bang for my buck. So
I feel
so I go at 240 for an hour. The reason I picked an hour is because I found a fellow nerd online. I was reading when I was researching, and he was a lab guy. So he had test equipment and he had tested it at 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and an hour. And he said that an hour was the sweet spot. So, so I mean, I've seen the timing all over the place. A lot of people go for a bit shorter than an hour. I'm sure as long as your method works, then it's good for you. But I started with an hour. It does smell. So if you live in an apartment, or you're trying to hide from somebody, maybe you're in not a legal state, then sous vide is a good method. So it's a bit more of an investment. But you can get your sous vide machine, get a plastic bag, and then decarb it in the sous vide. I forget the exact temperature offhand, but you can Google it. And then you just set it in your water bath, give it your time, and then it'll contain the smell so that you're not bugging neighbors.
That's brilliant. I never thought about that. Yeah. We do the oven.
Nice.
And we've done we put the
fan on and let everybody smell it. We put the fan on and let everybody out there in the world smell it too.
Fly a flag in front of the house.
Literally, it'll burn, like the first few minutes, it burns your eyes. You're like, whew. It's
for sure.
It's strong. Yeah.
I love it. I love when we bake.
That's awesome.
So, okay. So kind of moving on from that, how much flour do you use, like your flour to oil or butter ratio when you're now making your compound? Would you refer to it as a compound?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, like when you make your infusion or your oil or so mostly like cannabinoids are lipophilic. So they like oils and they like alcohol, and they stick to it. So you typically heat it with an oil, butter. I had them lab tested, and butter actually bound better than coconut oil. It might have been something to do with my method that day when I sent it away, but butter was a bit more effective for me. Or you can make cannabis sugar, which is in the book as well. So you can get a mason jar with really high proof vodka. I always walk into the liquor store and go, okay, what's your strongest vodka?
I don't have a problem.
But yeah, then you just put your weed in, your decarbed weed in with the alcohol, shake it around for, minimum 3 or 4 hours, but the longer the better. Sieve out the weed, mix it with sugar, and then bake off the alcohol, and then it's in the sugar. So then if you're doing a recipe like a meringue where an oil, it doesn't call for an oil. Meringue is mostly just eggs and sugar because you want it to be really light. So then you can use an infused sugar, or you can use it for drinks as well if you want to.
Yeah.
We made some and I like it in my coffee. We made some and I like it in my coffee on Sundays. It's great.
It's strong though. I mean, it kind of like an RSO. It it's there. That's what I find with the sugar, right? Right. Okay.
For sure.
Do you
I say my percentages actually. So as long as you keep it consistent and you do the math, then you should be okay. But you have to keep consistent expectations. So, go to your bud tender. I assume like a 16% weed, which is low for THC. A lot are higher, but I figure that a lot of people start out on the low side. But if a lot of people who are a bit more seasoned, they'll go a little bit higher with a 20%, a 25%, and then, just make sure that that it's going to turn out a little bit higher per piece. But I go for 7 grams in 2 cups of butter. So, and then that works out to be about 18 milligrams a tablespoon. So this is all going to sound like Greek, but as long as you follow the instructions in the book, you get to your 18 milligrams, you work out how many tablespoons are in your recipe, and then you work out how many pieces, then that's the math for you. So I usually try to keep it around 5 milligrams, 3 to 5 milligrams a piece, 3 milligrams if it's a party or something like that, where I know people will be eating a lot.
I like doing that too, because edibles taste really good. And that is the biggest problem with edibles, is that people want more. So if someone knows that they can eat an entire cookie rather than just a bite of it, it's just better for everybody, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then if
they're 5 milligrams and you got a higher dose, then you get to have 2 cookies instead of 1.
Right.
Or even 3 or 4 if you wanted to put it.
I've always been under the thought process that for every edible cookie you get, there should be a non-edible cookie, so that you could go back and have another cookie, right?
Yeah.
So you get a non-infused batch and an infused batch, and then you get to have extra. And then you don't get overly baked.
I do have kids in the house though. So one thing that I do always try to make sure is I try not to mix them up. I try, like, if I make cookies for them, I try to use a different recipe at the same time so that it's really clear, everything's clearly labeled. And in my house, my kids are very experienced. They always come into the kitchen and go, "Mom, do these have marijuana in them?" Yes, they do. And they go, I have to make sure that I bake separately for them on a Sunday or something like that. So
I love it. I love it. What is your favorite? Like we've got ghee versus butter versus coconut and other oils. So what is your preference, your favorite for baking?
For sure. I didn't have ghee tested. I've read that clarified butter, taking the milk solids out, which is what ghee is, that it binds a little bit better. So if you are looking for higher strength, that is a way to go. But if you're feeling lazy, you can just go ahead with full on milk solids in your butter and it'll be fine. So definitely the coconut oil is good for vegans. So, if you're not into your animal products, that's really a main reason that I included a lot of coconut oil recipes. So something to consider. And substituting, like if you decide to substitute your coconut oil for butter, just really make sure that you test an uninfused piece first so that you're not wasting a batch of your infusion, because the coconut oil won't always act exactly how butter acts. So it's not a straight one-to-one.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
We started making our butter the old school way in a pot of water with butter, with the water, and then you put it in the pot and it separates. Then we got a machine, which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
But we left straight butter probably about 2 years ago, and we switched to coconut oil. And then I started doing some ghee, and now I mix both of them together.
Okay.
50-50.
And the baking blocks, I don't know if they like that.
I like the experience. It blends well.
For sure.
I'll have to send you a pic of the last butter we made.
Yeah, I would
now baking wise though, Mrs. Weedman, ask her, like, does it blend? Because it could be me just wanting to make stronger butter.
I like it. I particularly like the flavor that you get from the coconut oil with the cannabis. I feel like it actually complements the cannabis and makes it more palatable, and it has kind of just a nutty nice flavor. And everything that I put into, especially if you're making granolas, it just tastes really nice. And you kind of lose the coconut and just get kind of this nutty, grainy flavor. But I do have issues with my butter sitting on top of things sometimes. Like when I make my caramels, it separates, or my milk scalds, and I do have issues with it. Is that because of using the oil?
You know what? It could be that they're different densities a little bit. If you're baking with oils and water-based stuff together, sometimes it'll separate. So that's where adding in the soy lecithin or sunflower lecithin, that'll help things combine a little bit more. They use it in things like salad dressings.
Binder.
Yes.
You can tell Mr. Weedman's.
Yes.
Well,
okay, so if when you do your decarbing and now you're making your butter, when you're making your butter or your compound with your oil, do you put your soy lecithin in at that point, or do you put it into your recipe after you've made your butter?
I do. I tend to put it into the butter itself. So yeah, when I'm making my infusion, then I'll put a tablespoon or so into the infusion. But it's not mandatory unless you are running into problems with separation like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So wait, hold on, because we do add it, and sometimes it still separates. So
and then sometimes I even add it after. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. Like, you can get separation in. It has to do with temperature as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. You might want to test if you're using a thermometer, like a candy thermometer or something like that. Make sure that
I bought a better one.
Yeah, I've had to upgrade my thermometer a bunch of times. So really watch your temperature. Make sure that it's fully incorporated with a whisk instead of a spoon or something like that. That can help. Yeah.
Just keep playing. I mean, there's no loss in trying, right? You just get more
Yeah,
edibles,
for sure.
right? Yeah. What do you think is the best recipe for a newbie for your first time making edibles? What is your suggested go-to recipe?
Yeah, so one of my favorites in the book is the triple chocolate cookies. They're pretty decadent. They're
good.
pretty easy to make. They take a square of like a thin lint chocolate that you put on the top at the end, so it kind of melts almost like a chocolate coating. So those are pretty amazing. They're pretty fail safe. Like you're not going to really run into problems. Chocolate chip cookies, they're pretty safe. They're easy. It's something everybody likes. It always frustrates me because I'll ask somebody, "So what's your favorite? Like, what do you want me to make for you? I can make anything. I can infuse anything." And they'll say, how about chocolate chip cookies?" And it's like,
give me something. Yeah, give me a challenge.
So yeah, those are pretty good. And then if you want to get a little bit more adventurous, another one of my favorites is the licorice toffees.
Those look good.
Yeah, they're pretty decadent. They'll impress people and they're fun to share. They're fun to bring to a party. Everybody kind of raves about them. And they're not super strong licorice flavor if you don't like your licorice.
I do. So I think I'll make that'll be my first recipe I make from your cookbook then, and I'll send you a picture.
Yeah,
nice.
for sure.
And I get to eat them.
And I do have to say, it's very cool. The next little topic that we're going to say is how do you determine the serving size and the dosage size? And I did find your cookbook to be so helpful. You have so much information at the beginning, a lot of explanations, a lot of descriptions and definitions and terminology and measurements, and you do even talk about dosage and measurements of dosage in your cookbook.
For sure.
You did a really great job. It's a great book. Yeah.
Yeah, with dosing, kind of if you want to play with it, start backwards and decide how much you want per piece. And then you can go through, play with the assumptions. So maybe you use more wheat in your butter than I used. Maybe you spike it with with an oil from a dispensary, like a full spectrum, or a distillate if you're not looking for the flavor of the oil. So yeah, and there's a really good calculator actually. I don't know if you guys know Jeff, the 420 chef. He has he has a good online calculator that was really close to. It brought really close results to what I sent to the lab, so it's pretty trustworthy. Yeah, and then you can play with your assumptions if you want to make things a little stronger.
And is there a trick when you're dealing with home grow? Is there a trick for deciphering? Because obviously you can't test your own cannabis at home to know the strength of it. So do you have a trick for home growers when they're baking with their own cannabis?
Yeah, I kind of Google the strain. If you can find it, like like a lot of people are kind of making creative strains these days, but if you Google the strain, it'll give you an idea of the strength, the THC strength, and then you can kind of go based on that. Home grow, I find, is a little bit lighter. So you still weigh the same amount.
I haven't smoked my home grow.
So you're probably going to use more plant to get to the 7 grams. It's going to be, so you might end up with a bit of a greener product because you're using more plant matter, kind of.
Okay.
Unless you're a really good grower, of course.
Okay.
So I appreciate that. That's going to help a lot of our listeners out because a lot of people reach out about baking and stuff, and especially when we post stuff. So thank you for that awesome information. Your story, you told us a little about them. There's one in particular that I told you I bookmarked. I would love to meet this person. Her story wowed the fuck out of me, and I was like, God, this reminds me of somebody I know. But this is just like classic. Please tell me about Audrey McEwen. Please, 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 please. I want to meet her. I want her autograph. I want her to sign my chest. I want Audrey. She is a badass. 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 OG gangster badass. I want to know about her. Tell me about her.
So she is my friend's aunt. When you talk to her, I wish that you guys, I'm going to do a post. I'm going to put it up on my Instagram so that you guys can hear her voice, because she's 80 now. But she talks just in the slowest way, and she laughs with this deep, slow laugh. But yeah, she smuggled hash. So she was a nurse. She was a nurse. She was living in Montreal. She had there she is.
I told you it was bookmarked. The only fucking page bookmarked.
She had kind of a short relationship, let's say, with a guy in Montreal. And while she was there in his apartment, a woman came in and exchanged a suitcase and walked away with money. And he said, "Oh, I'll just be a minute." And she said, "Ooh, what's that all about?" And so she asked him, and he was actually a smuggler, a dealer. And so she said, "Well, I'd get a piece of that, you know." But when she tells the story, she said, "I guess I was a bit of a slut. I was, you know." So she and her friend, they were nurses. Her friend agreed to go with her, and she wasn't young and stupid. She was 35, and she flew to India, and brought back hash in.
Wow.
So they said, "Don't bring many clothes." So she said, "I just brought a nightie and I brought a pantsuit." And so they strapped the hash inside the suitcase, but it was heavy. And she picked it up and went, "Oh, I think they're trying to get away with too much." And they did, and she got caught in Amsterdam. And they got off the plane, and she just knew right away that they were caught. So they were separated immediately. She was put in solitary confinement for 6 months, I think. They tried to get her to snitch. She didn't say anything.
Snitches end up in ditches. She didn't snitch. She ain't no snitch. I love it.
Badass.
But yeah, I mean, she's embarrassed about the story now. She says, "I don't know what I was thinking.
Hell no.
I was bored with nursing," but then she'll take a long pause and she'll go, "But the money was flowing." So she said, "I got this, when we were in India, we had the time of our lives. I got a big sapphire ring." And so, I mean, she is really, really an incredible person. She just, I'm lucky enough to be able to go on a cottage weekend with her. She's a person who, she's the aunt of my friend. My friend's mother passed away when my friend was 16, and Odd moved in and looked after her, made sure she didn't go off the rails when she was feeling alone, and really, really solid person who had a bit of a sense of adventure. So
that's so cool. That's so cool.
My favorite story. My favorite story in the book. Oh God!
Well, if that doesn't make people want to go buy the book, I mean, come on, right?
There should be a short story movie written about her. You only need like an hour movie.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Maybe an hour and a half, just because she said she was a slut, so there's probably some fun stuff going on too that she could talk about in the movie too.
She did. Yeah, the other thing I brought up with her, she had an affair with Leonard Cohen too. Do you guys know Leonard?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I read that in the book. That was awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So
such a badass
composer, right?
I love it.
Yeah, poet, musician. Yeah, he passed away, I think, 2 or 3 years ago.
Wow,
amazing.
Yeah.
Did you what was the biggest challenge? Like, writing a book is not easy. I know it's not. I don't know how long it took you to write the book, when you got it published, but probably wasn't easy. Kids, life, work, scientists, baking for friends. What was the biggest challenge? A couple of them. Give me 1, 2, 3.
I would say it was an absolute passion project. It's it's one thing I would just encourage everybody. If you know that something is right and something that you enjoy and something you're passionate about, just decide to do it. Put your head down. Don't take no for an answer, because I think this book is one of the things that I just decided to go for. So, you know, whenever I had free time, I was baking, I was enjoying myself. So, you know, follow your passion project. But in terms of challenges, I would say I had a lot of baking failures. I tried to do things that were too fancy sometimes and had to kind of ditch them. So things like cinnamon buns, you know, were nearly the death of me. Mochi, I don't know if you guys have ever had mochi. I would say don't try to make them. Like the
No.
Japanese little scoops of ice cream covered in dough. They taste really great when you buy them. I wouldn't recommend trying to infuse them. So those things were challenging, and then just getting published. Getting published is it's a hard game, because you have to sort of really pitch your passion to someone else. But the publisher, Touchwood, bought in and supported and was willing to support the stories and the vision, and so yeah, I'd say those are the biggest things.
Nice. Cool. Nice. That's good. I love it though. Don't stop. Keep on going. Struggles are real. You know, you keep on fighting until you get it done. It was your dream, goals. You set it forward. It's awesome. Just we talk about that a lot on this show. You know, follow your dream, follow your goal, passion. Go for it. Don't let anything stop you. Live your life. You know.
For sure.
So
yeah, 100%.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Miss Weedman.
Yeah, and what are you hoping that people take away from your book? And after they've been using your book and cooking with it, what do you hope that they take away from it?
For sure. I think it's just a constant fight to destigmatize, as you guys know. I think edibles are such a warm way to encourage people, to introduce people to weed, to introduce neighbors, especially medicinally. I really hope, you know, as people are in pain, as people are sick, that they consider options, especially older people. You know, I think there's so much potential for I don't know, for people to take advantage of this plant that people aren't. One thing that's really been encouraging is being able to get the word out in some of the states where it's not legal yet. So, been messaging with people in Alabama.
Yeah, we know a lot about Alabama. They only let you have rectal marijuana, and you can only have it suppositories. That's it. That's all they give you up there.
So yeah, I just feel for those people. You know, hopefully a cookbook can get there without
my poor audience in Alabama. They only get whatever it's called. You know, rectal stuff. That's it. That's all they get.
On that note, I'm going to segue because I've got a question. Have there been barriers then too with getting stores to carry your book because it's cannabis related?
There have, yeah. There's one store in my own neighborhood, and I had to get a bit pissed because it's this edgy store, and they have, like, you know, it's a store that hipsters would really shop in and that kind of thing. It may or may not be called the Good Neighbor.
Maybe not. Maybe
they have a huge alcohol section, like cocktails for Christmas. They had shakers. They had, you know, and then I phoned them. There's kind of a small business. They're not a big chain, and they said, "Oh no, we don't do anything with cannabis." And I kind of said to them, you know, I don't know if you guys realize, but everyone is using cannabis. Like your market loves this plant. So, you know, you got to kind of wake up to that. So, for sure, there are still barriers, but it's really exciting to see it on Amazon in restricted states. Or, so yeah, I'm pretty proud.
And has it only been states where it's legal that will take the book, or are you even able to sell it in non-legal?
Yep, non-legal states for sure. You can get it.
Awesome.
There's no THC in that book, so you can't get high from it.
I know.
Only get
I just didn't know if there'd be resistance on. Yeah. That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, for sure.
So I've heard so many horror stories. I mean, it's even happened to me when it's come to edibles, especially in my early stages of eating edibles on a more regular basis, but never asking people, oh, hey, I just made some cookies. You want to try one? Oh, sure. Blah. Next thing you know, I'm passed out and wake up 2 days later and don't know what happened.
Yeah.
We've heard the stories. So what is some, like, in your book, you talk about safety. I mean, I've talked about edibles so much, and you know, the line that you used, I won't steal your thunder, but like, what is your, like, what do you think? What should people be looking like for when they're doing edibles, like safety and protocol, I guess, which I don't even want to use that word, but it's fine.
For sure. So I would say start low and go slow. It's, it's not my catchphrase, but if you're learning, you need to kind of learn what your personal dose is. So it's kind of different for everybody. Some people, uh, you know, you guys know, like some people need their heads blown off, and other people are really sensitive to it, and they need more of a balanced strain where you're getting CBD and THC together to kind of take the edge off. So just start slow, start in a safe environment, make sure things are well labeled. That's a huge thing. Like I really had to think about doing this knowing that people would be baking in homes with little kids. So I trust you, make sure that you're being safe with edibles and that you're keeping them far away from people who shouldn't have them. Make sure there's consent. So I think I talk about in the book, like there's promise for people with Alzheimer's or neuroprotection, but make sure that people are, well aware of what they're taking. Don't slip it to them thinking it'd be funny. Yeah, and that's it. Have fun, experiment, like take it easy, don't stress. Do it in
It's supposed to relieve the stress.
Yeah,
Don't be
for
stressed
sure.
taking edibles. Have fun with them.
Sure.
Edibles are fun. I love them. I love a good edible. It's so much fun. I love going to shows on them. I love partying with people. I love hanging out at the house. Here's the thing about edibles. It's funny because when you go, still to this day, when you go out, you want to smoke a joint with me? And I'm like, I don't smoke. I'm like, oh, I got an edible. You want one? Oh, I love edibles. I'm like,
the same thing.
Or you get that thing where, like, my neighbors down the street, when they found out about we do a cannabis podcast, I grow my own, and there's one neighbor, he goes, oh, I love edibles. I do them all the time. And I go to our friend's house and we play cards on Thursday nights and we all take gummies or we all do chocolates. And I look at him like, you? Really? I gave him a high five, so I was super excited. But for years, he was just a Heineken drinker. It's all if you saw me smoking a joint, he'd give me the look, like, now it's like, that's the look you give to people when you're like, okay.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a pleasant surprise.
Along too. Like people are switching over to the drinks a lot. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I like a good drink. So what's on the plate? What do you got? What you serving up next?
Ooh, so yeah, I'm working on a book. It's more of a coffee table book. So again, it's cooking, but it's like an arts-based book. Like I was saying about the history of prohibition, really, the last 100 years, what we've come through, and a lot of the characters who are involved in legalization, a lot of the people who stood in the way. Harry Anslinger, he's in there. I don't know if you
we call him ass slinger on this show.
For sure. So so that's one that's just getting off the ground. So that'll be in the cards pretty soon. And I'd love to do an appetizers book in the future too.
Nice.
Sort of party treats that are less sugary, a bit more like party edibles. So yeah.
Nice.
Love it.
Nice.
Party
That's
time.
Exciting.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, man, it's been great having you on the show. Are you before we said we were going to do an after show smoke, you and I, right?
Yeah.
All right. So before you get baked and you forget what we're going to talk about, plug your book, plug your Insta, plug your social media, tell everybody where they can get the book at. Throw a little out there, shout out. I want to give a shout out to you and thank you, but go ahead.
For sure. So butter and flour, but it's FLOW, as we know and love. You can follow me. Mostly Instagram is where I have the biggest presence. So AnnInfusion, AnnInfusion. My website's AnnAllchin.com. And that's about it. I love messaging. So reach out, say hi, show me your successes, show me your failures. And
Picks. Happy baking. I love it. I love it. So let's smoke real quick. Mrs. Weedman, you and I get to smoke on Friday. You're finally going to be back with me.
Soon.
I've missed my smoking partner, my smoking friend for the last, 10 days
12
now?
days. 12 days.
12. Oh, she's counting 12 days.
Yeah.
12 days. Tomorrow we celebrate. We celebrate with some Veuve Clouvet and some weed. So, rosé for all. Friday. What are you smoking on? What are you smoking on, Ann? What do you got there?
We're gonna ask. So it's a mysterious pre-roll. I usually buy sativa, but I've been putting them in my weed donkey.
Oh my gosh, is that great?
Hee haw, hee haw, hee haw.
Does it come out of his butt? You push it down?
His ears, and then it comes out of his tail. So I've kind of lost track of what's what, but
that's awesome.
That's okay. It's all good.
Let's light up. Thank you, Ann, for coming on the
jealous.
show.
I love you guys.
I'm gonna smoke this bowl for you.
What are you smoking? It's not fair.
I'm smoking Ursula Berry.
I'm not.
Sorry, Mrs. Weedman. I know. Everyone who listens to the last episode will know why Mrs. Weedman's not smoking weed till tomorrow.
Yeah, couple more days. I'll get there.
So, I'd like to thank Ann for coming on the show while she's getting her joint lit up. It was a real pleasure for you to send me that book and let me read it. And it was an honor to learn about all of the stories of people you told on there and their expedition, good, bad, ugly, but now it's all good because it's legal. And their stories were wonderful. Your recipes. Oh, I can't wait for Mrs. Weedman to get ready to make some. I'm excited. I got 3 pounds of butter. I got a pound of sugar and a lot more weed to make some more butter. Yeah. I have about a pound of weed too. So to make more butter. That's what happens when you home grow, and you just got a lot of weed and you just bake and smoke. Look at that. Look at the big clouds you're blowing. I love it. Well, thank you so much. Awesome. Mrs. Weedman, you got anything else to say before we go?
I wish I was smoking right now. But Ann, thank you so much for joining us. This was so great. Very cool. I wish you so much success. It's so cool to see another woman follow your dream and just battle through all of those challenges, because we face them. Everybody faces challenges when you're trying to do something that you really believe in. And Mr. Weedman and I have our passion projects too, and we know the struggle. So congratulations and the best of luck to you.
Awesome. Same to you guys. Thanks to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. As Paulie always says, smoke smart, puff, puff, and away.
Puff, puff, pass.